I'm Pat Kernan with the New York 1 Minute. It is primary day. Nearly 200 candidates are on various ballots around the city. The most notable citywide race is the Democratic battle for mayor. Recent polls have shown Mark Green and Fernando Ferrer in a dead heat. Alan Hevesy and Peter Vallone have lagged behind. On the Republican side, polls show Michael Bloomberg with a sizable lead over Herman Badillo. Other races include public advocate and controller. New York 1 will have coverage throughout the day and wall-to-wall coverage of the results tonight. A man and a woman have been hospitalized in Queens after being shot inside a parking garage. Police say they were involved in a fight and gunfire erupted. More insecticide spraying to combat the West Nile virus on Staten Island has been ordered. Aerial spraying scheduled for later this week. Teachers at 10 city Catholic high schools say they're ready to strike. They're looking for a pay increase and better benefits. And if you're a Knicks season ticket holder, opening night at the Garden could be special this year. Michael Jordan's all but confirmed a comeback. This is a live picture from our camera on the Empire State Building looking toward the World Trade Center. A 3-alarm fire and a report of an explosion somewhere in the World Trade Center. You can see the plume of smoke from the top of one of the World Trade Center towers. And this has just come into us, word of this incident at the World Trade Center. The fire department responding with a large number of crews to the World Trade Center. I don't have a lot more detail on this than that at the moment, but you can see obviously there's a lot of smoke there, and at that height of the World Trade Center, obviously a very difficult fire to fight. We have someone in the area who's seen some of this happen. George Shea is on the telephone. George, tell me what your vantage point is and what do you know about this place?
I'm on West Street, right out of the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, and I was driving in, and I heard an enormous explosion. Then I heard another enormous explosion, and it scared me. I looked out the window, and an enormous tire, what appeared to be a tire, smashed down on the street in front of me. And I looked out, and there was an enormous amount of debris, and we were about 2 or 3 or 4 blocks down from the World Trade Center. If this is the northern building in the World Trade Center, there was an enormous amount of debris, and I yelled to the guy in the car, let me out, and I ran back. A gentleman next to me had been hit by debris, and it appears to be about 20 stories from the top on the west side of the northern World Trade Building, and it appears that an entire floor or two have been blown out, and it was the scariest thing I've ever seen.
I want you to stay on the line with me because this is some important information for us, but I'm just getting word from our assignment desk that we have information that a plane has crashed into the side of the World Trade Center, and I do not know any more about what type of airplane it is or how this happened. George Shea, again, a witness who's been in the area and heard this explosion. George, would that be consistent with what you heard?
It would only be speculation, but it would explain why a wheel crashed on West Street about 15 or 20 feet from the car that I was in. Otherwise, where would that wheel have come from? Because this is not anywhere near the ground. This is very, very far up in the air. So if that's true, it would appear that the wheel was thrown about 4 blocks south. And it's from my position, I can see on the south and west side of the building that there appears to be damage, and perhaps it actually struck the south portion of that building.
Also on the line for us this morning, Steve Sterling, who was in the area as well and has called us with some information. Steve, can you hear me? Steve, are you there? All right, I was told that we had Steve Sterling. Steve, let me try once more. Are you with me?
Yes, I am.
Tell me what your location is and what you've seen.
We're on Beach Street between Hudson and Greenwich, 6 floors up in a warehouse loft, and we're about 6 blocks north of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Just so happens we have breakfast at this window which looks at the World Trade Centers, which is usually a pretty glorious sight. Now it's one of the most frightening things I've ever seen. But we were just sitting there and heard, what was obviously a very fast, very low flying aircraft, and I had just said to my wife, wow, that must be a military plane or something, although it sounded like a propeller airplane. But you can see from where we're looking that you can see the exact imprint of the airplane. So when we looked up, we literally, at the very second, saw this plane just plow into the building, a huge plume of fire, which I assume was the fuel from the airplane. But if you look at the World Trade Center from our vantage point, you can actually just see a complete outline of an airplane making a left bank.
As you look down at the World Trade Center buildings, you see that it is one World Trade Center that is the one where the impact was. One World Trade Center is the one with the large television antenna on it, and the restaurant windows on the World is in that tower. The other one is the one with the observation deck. At this point, the Associated Press with a story that says there is no report of any casualties, without jumping to too many conclusions, looking at the extent of this damage and knowing how well populated that building is. At that, now there's another explosion down to the left side on the second World Trade Center tower. You see that huge ball of fire that just went up there. I know it's quite a distant shot, but that looked to me to be happening at number 2 World Trade Center, at the second World Trade Center tower. And it is at some distance there, but this is now a dramatic development on the second World Trade Center tower, and I can't imagine that there would not be a serious evacuation and a full mobilization now, emergency command center and so forth, as the fire department moves as much equipment as possible to the World Trade Center. If I can get our crews to take a bit of the tape, I'd like to see that explosion again from about 30 seconds ago, if we can get that back, because it had looked as though this was confined to one of the World Trade Center towers, but now with that explosion a moment ago, it's not clear what's happening, because as we looked at that impact, it appeared that this was happening just at the number 1 World Trade Center tower. But that explosion, clearly as I saw it on that distant shot, came from 2 World Trade Center tower, and we now have a mobilization at both of the World Trade Center towers. Again, World Trade Center, built in 1973, 110 stories tall. This building, of course, the scene of the explosion, the bombing there many years ago, but this is like nothing that has been seen at the World Trade Center. We have that tape now. This is about a minute and a half ago. Watch on the left side on the number 2 World Trade Center tower. Again, as I said, that shot at some distance, but that explosion coming through the World Trade Center tower has now ripped a second hole in the World Trade Center tower, and the fire department back on the scene. This is live pictures now. Do we have another eyewitness on the telephone? World Trade Center, 1,362 feet tall. They are the tallest 2 buildings in New York. Number 1 World Trade Center is the one with the television antenna on it. That's where we saw the initial impact after this plane crash at the World Trade Center, and we're trying to ascertain at this point what would have caused that massive explosion that ripped through number 2 World Trade Center, the tower on the left, just a few moments ago. It was 1993 when the terrorist bomb ripped about a 200-foot crater at the lower levels of the World Trade Center. There are about 40,000 people working in the World Trade Center, and with this happening sometime about 8:45, okay, well, we may have an explanation now. I'm sorry, I'm just getting some information. We may have an explanation for what happened there when we saw that second explosion, because the towers are far enough apart that you would think they were independent. We have 2 of our people responding to the area saying that they saw another aircraft crash into the other tower of the World Trade Center. I don't know at this point whether that would be a plane that was in the area, whether it would be a news helicopter or a police helicopter or something like that, but that's the word we're getting now, is that after all of this, after the mayhem going on at one World Trade Center, there was a second aircraft that crashed into the other World Trade Center tower, and that explains that explosion of a moment ago. Again, this is coming in from a couple of our NY1 employees who are responding to the area. Stay on the line with me here. We've managed to enhance this shot a little bit, and we're going to replay it here. This is the shot of that second explosion. I see clearly that plane now approaching, passing the one tower, and there it is, impact to the second. So
it may have been coming from Newark Airport, because Newark Airport is in that direction.
Well, and in fact, now according to the Associated Press, the FBI is investigating a report of a plane hijacking just before this crash at the World Trade Center. Myrtle's our director in the control room. If we can get that back once more, if there's any possibility of a slow motion as we play back that tape again, we're looking, or we've got this shot of about 9 o'clock, the second impact at the World Trade Center. Watch the right side of your screen, that airplane approaching the number 2 World Trade Center tower, about to crash into it now, and there's the explosion. This happened about 9 o'clock.
There are thousands of people out here on the streets, as you can imagine, stunned. I saw 2 women crying hysterically. It is an absolute scene that you can't even imagine. There are thousands of people here at Battery Park City. I want to bring in right now, if we have the time, Jeffrey, I want to bring in a man who works here at the Public Advocates for Campaign office. I'm sorry, sir, you want to join us right now? We're live on New York 1. If you can just tell Pat Kiernan, our anchor, exactly what you saw while you were outside.
Okay, I just had gotten out of the number 1 train on Rector, and I noticed that the one tower was billowing smoke. And I was looking at it, and everyone was looking at it on the street, and all of a sudden I saw a blur on the other tower, and just a massive explosion, a fireball, and debris, glass, paper, shoes, just flew, and everyone on the street rushed, away from the World Trade Center, because they thought probably there was other explosions. So that's what I saw. Apparently I saw the second plane hit the side of the World Trade Center.
I'm just getting more information from CNN on this this fire at the Pentagon. They have now evacuated the Pentagon, so that is going on as well, and we're looking into this to determine exactly whether there is a link to this terrorist alert. And now CNN reporting that the White House has been evacuated as well. So the terrorist alert spreading from New York to Washington as well. President Bush made a comment about this approximately 15 minutes ago, and we want to listen in now. Excuse me, just before we get to the president, Associated Press now reporting an aircraft has crashed into the Pentagon. So now this is the third apparently deliberate air crash. The first 2 into the towers of the World Trade Center, the third crashing into the Pentagon, and the White House is being evacuated now. If I'm seeing pictures of the smoke from the Pentagon on CNN, and I don't know if we can bring those pictures up, but for the moment we'll focus on. All right, let's take a look at this picture from Washington now. This is the scene from Washington looking toward the Pentagon, the smoke there. So this scene that's been playing out in New York, now playing out at the Pentagon as well, and we'll get more information on that as soon as it becomes available. Again, the White House has been evacuated now, and there's a report of a fire on the Washington Mall, according to CNN, as we continue to look into the impact in Washington. Back to New York now, live pictures of the World Trade Center towers. We're at 8:45 this morning. The first of 2 aircraft crashed into the Trade Center towers. We have been reporting for about the past 30 minutes through a law enforcement source that 2 airplanes were hijacked at Boston's Logan Airport, and it is believed that those are the airplanes that crashed into the World Trade Center towers. Our information said that 1 was a United airplane and 1 was an American Airlines plane. Another U.S. official telling the Associated Press that there was a transmission from one of these airplanes indicating that they had been hijacked, and that was the first word that authorities received, that there was something wrong, but clearly from what we've heard so far, no indication of what was. Tower with the TV antenna on top of it is 1 World Trade Center. That's the one where the initial impact occurred. Right. And then the one with the observation deck on it is 2 World Trade Center, and that's where the second explosion occurred about 15 minutes later.
I can still see flames shooting out of both, so it's an incredible sight. Do you have, obviously they've told the planes to come down, so do you have any shots right now of it?
We've got a shot looking up from the ground at the side of the tower there. but we're not looking at the actual crater on the side, but we can certainly see the smoke coming from the building. Have you had a sense over the past hour? Because from what I'm seeing, there's as much smoke as there was an hour ago. That they have not made much of a dent in this fire. I don't even know how much fire equipment they've been able to move up onto those upper floors.
It's just coming down, Pat. It is just coming down.
Watch the right
it's
side.
Exploding.
The building is ripping apart.
It is billowing. Pat, the debris is flying. I'm going to run.
Okay. All right. We hope that Kristen was not in a position where she would have been injured by that. But the tower is literally crumbling into the streets of Manhattan there, and
blocks and blocks.
I don't know. Don't know how much debris is falling or where that debris has fallen, and we'll attempt to reestablish our contact with Kristen, but that tower's not there anymore. A dramatic scene, and this is going to clearly mean that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people injured as that building has fallen. New York 1's Sharon Diesenhaus is with me as well now as we watch this dramatic videotape.
This is just extraordinary. We have just seen, that was one World Trade Center?
At this point I don't even know which
one of the World Trade Center towers.
That was two World Trade Centers. That was the second. The second impact was, but it has vanished from in front of us.
Crumbling. It's now 10 o'clock. That means it was roughly an hour after the initial impact, which seemed to impact roughly the top, I would say, 1/4 of the building. And now we see the building has apparently crumbled.
Again, if you're just joining us, there is almost no way in or out of Manhattan at this point. They have sealed the bridges and tunnels. PATH train service has been shut down. As far as aircraft service, not only the 3 New York airports shut down, but aircraft takeoffs across the country have been suspended because of these terrorist attacks on 1 World Trade Center, on 2 World Trade Center, and on the Pentagon. That attack on the Pentagon came about 30 minutes after the first attack at the World Trade Center. New York 1, through law enforcement sources, got word very early on that the plane that crashed into 1 World Trade Center and the plane that crashed into 2 World Trade Center had both been hijacked from Logan Airport in Boston. New York 1's Kristen Shaughnessy was on the phone with us a few moments ago as 1 World Trade Center literally disintegrated before our eyes. Kristen, I can't tell you how relieved I am to hear your voice.
Thank you very much. It was quite a scene, Pat. As I said, I was looking up at it, and right when we were talking, I saw it come down. And they literally, I have to commend the law enforcement. They got everybody, it seemed, as best they could where I was, out of that area. There were people who were stumbling and losing their shoes. I actually ran barefoot for about 7 blocks. But they got everybody in that area. There were people who were, breaking down on it. Was, they couldn't walk that much, and they really helped them, and then they assisted them, and they got them to safety. So now what they're doing is they're evacuating everyone to either Midtown or the Upper East Side. People were lined up here at the phones, and they said, no more phone service. You really have to get out of this area because...
And an additional advisory from New York City Transit now. There is no subway service in New York City. All subway service throughout the 5 boroughs has been suspended as a precaution after this terrorist attack at the World Trade Center. So we advise you to find your family, make sure that everyone's safe, get together, and just stay out of the streets at this point until we get a chance to assess exactly what's going on here. There is no indication that there is any further danger, but
exactly.
They are, and I don't want to be alarmist about that.
Very important.
But at this point, it would be of great help to the authorities down at the World Trade Center and the people working in that area that people just stay clear and stay home if possible.
Clearly, we have a large disaster on our hands, but and I think the officials simply don't want a larger disaster to be at risk. So that's why so many precautions have been taken. The planes are shut down nationwide by the FAA. New Jersey State Police.
There it goes. The other World Trade Center tower is collapsing. Watch your screen there.
10:28 now. The second World Trade Center, 2 World Trade Center is disintegrating.
Now the second tower has collapsed. The first collapsing.
This is 1 World Trade Center now.
That's correct. That's correct. 2 World Trade Center collapsed at about 9:55, and now that picture, it was difficult to tell with so much smoke, but 110 stories tall, 2 towers built in 1973, and they have now both come down after this terrorist
And we
attack.
can only imagine the magnitude of this force when you consider how large the bomb was in 1993 that did structural damage only to really the foundation, did not shake the structural integrity of the building. And we were assured after 1993, when the building was reopened, that it was structurally sound and ready to withstand enormous blows. So to imagine what kind of force this must have been is...
Back on the phone with us. John, this tower, 110 stories tall, collapsing with no significant notice. The footprint of debris from a collapse of that magnitude must be tremendous. Do you have any understanding of that?
Pat, from where I am right now, we ran back to the live truck. The dust cloud, the second dust cloud, has completely covered our truck. I'm inside the live truck now looking out, and I cannot see more than 10 feet past me at this point. There is a yellow taxi, which is just parked right in front of us. Outside of that yellow taxi, I cannot see across the street. Faint images of emergency lights off about 20 to 30 feet in front of me. We're here in the truck with 2 complete strangers, as well as our New York 1 crew. And you cannot see anything. It is the heaviest of snowfall, it appears like right now. It is as dramatic and as heart-wrenching as you could possibly imagine.
John, are you having any difficulty breathing?
Absolutely. You can't breathe. Everyone has their shirts either off, shirts wrapped around their faces, napkins held up to their faces. At this point, it feels to me just like ash. I'm not feeling any sort of a burning sensation in my throat. I'm essentially just having a difficult time breathing, as is everyone else down here. Thousands and thousands of us we're covered with ash right now. What else can I say? It's as if the chimney was blown right onto us. But again, no burning sensation. It doesn't seem like any sort of an acidic substance. Obviously, with planes and the jet fuel, I don't smell any jet fuel from down where I am. But again, I'm several blocks away. But right now, we're just covered in our second overwhelming dust cloud. Some debris. We could see it from a distance when the second building went, but I don't see any debris here from me. Again, it is just an unexplainable amount of ash, which has covered all of it.
Are you still on the line with us as we wait for the mayor? We're just waiting for Mayor Giuliani to join us by telephone for an update. Yes, we are.
Okay. All right.
Are we still waiting for the mayor?
Okay. You are about to be on with the mayor.
Okay.
Pat? Mayor Giuliani, it's Pat Kiernan. I'm with Sharon Deason-House here. I wonder if you could give us an update of the emergency operations right now.
The first thing I'd like to do is take this opportunity to tell everyone to remain calm and, to the extent that they can, to evacuate Lower Manhattan. Walk north. If you're in Lower Manhattan, walk north and get above Canal Street. Things will be a lot safer. We have as many police personnel and fire personnel as we can spare down there, and they'll help direct you out. But try to get out of Lower Manhattan.
Mayor Giuliani, we should stress, is there any immediate threat? This should be an orderly, calm evacuation at this point.
Right now, everyone should, other than Lower Manhattan, where people should evacuate, and the police and fire will help you, everybody else should remain calm. They should remain at work or in school. We don't want them all out there crowding things and making it difficult, because we're going to be moving people around to hospitals all over the city, and we need as much order as we possibly can get.
Mayor Giuliani, do you have any sense of the order of magnitude of injuries and deaths?
I do not, except to say that it's horrendous. I was down there and watched it and saw people jumping out of the World Trade Center. It's a horrible, horrible situation. I think right now What we have to focus on is saving as many of the people as we can save at this point and trying to bring some order to this. And then maybe later on we'll have a better sense of the magnitude of it. We have a lot of police officers, a lot of firefighters, a lot of emergency personnel that were down there. And the thing to do now is to evacuate Lower Manhattan in an orderly way. Just get above Canal Street, and then this way we'll have the space in the room for the ambulances and everyone else to operate. We're going to try to get subways down into Lower Manhattan so that people can take the subway out. The subway, and we should have further information about that in a little while. That might help alleviate some of the pressure in Lower Manhattan. We've been in contact with the White House and asked them to secure the space around the city. They've been doing that for at least the last hour and a half. I've spoken to the governor several times, and the governor and I agree that the election today should be canceled.
Yes.
Mayor Giuliani,
the election will, as soon as we can, we'll figure out an alternative date for it, but we need all the police personnel and everything else that we can to focus on the evacuation effort.
Absolutely. Mayor Giuliani, do you have any sense of what the status of the bunker is? Is it at all operational?
That is right in the middle of both the police department, and that area is all cordoned off. We've moved city government to the firehouse in Greenwich Village. That's where I'm operating from right now, and we'll probably operate from a police facility in the area of Greenwich Village shortly.
Mayor Giuliani,
everything in Lower Manhattan, except for the people that are there for rescue efforts, has been removed. We removed everyone from City Hall. We removed everyone from the police department other than the most necessary communications personnel. And we've moved up above Canal Street. And that's what we're urging everyone to do. We literally walked out and helped walk people out. And we're urging them all to get above Canal Street so that we have the fewest number of people down there possible, and just those down there for the rescue effort.
We're just waiting for Mayor Giuliani to join us by telephone for an update. Yes, we are.
Okay. All right.
Are we still waiting for the mayor?
Okay. You are about to be on with the mayor.
Okay.
Two planes that originated from Boston involved in these terrorist attacks, two of them striking the World Trade Center towers in New York, one striking the Pentagon, one crashing outside of Pittsburgh. We have an advisory in now that the United Nations building has been evacuated, another precautionary measure in the city that they have taken as they try to assess the severity of the ongoing terrorist threat. Immediately after it was clear what happened, there was a mobilization of city personnel, and a number of areas cordoned off, sealed up, whether you're talking about the tunnels, the Lincoln and Holland tunnels, George Washington Bridge, the subway system, the PATH trains. There was an immediate reaction there to just try to prevent anything else from happening as they mobilized all of the emergency crews and moved them down toward the World Trade Center. The live picture you're looking at there is where the World Trade Center towers stood only a couple of hours ago. It was just before 9 o'clock when we received our first word that a plane had struck the World Trade Center towers. American Airlines is confirming that two of its planes were hijacked and involved in this. American says one of the planes was Flight 11, a Boeing 767, took off from Boston this morning. It was headed to Los Angeles with 81 people on board, 9 flight attendants, and 2 pilots.
The United States will hunt down and punish those responsible for these cowardly acts. I've been in regular contact with the Vice President, Secretary of Defense, the National Security Team, and my cabinet. We have taken all appropriate security precautions to protect the American people. Our military at home and around the world is on high alert status, and we have taken the necessary security precautions to continue the functions of your government. We have been in touch with the leaders of Congress and with world leaders to assure them that we will do whatever is necessary to protect America and Americans. I ask the American people to join me in saying a thanks for all the folks who have been fighting hard to rescue our fellow citizens, and to join me in saying a prayer for the victims and their families. The resolve of our great nation is being tested, but make no mistake, we will show the world that we will pass this test. God bless.
President Bush at an Air Force base in Louisiana, where they decided to divert Air Force One to avoid any security threat that there may be in Washington.
The Afghans' hardline Taliban rulers are rejecting suggestions that Osama bin Laden was behind today's attacks. He says that, the spokesman says, that bin Laden doesn't have the facilities to carry out such a well-orchestrated attack. As you know, bin Laden is the Saudi fugitive millionaire, one of the top 10 wanted men by the United States government for attacks carried out on the USS Cole. As you remember, several years ago, there was an orchestrated attack on U.S. embassies in Africa, in Kenya and Tanzania, simultaneous, almost virtually within minutes of each other, similar to the attacks here.
This is across the street from the World Trade Center. All these cars were like, they were burnt, and
when you say across the street, literally across the street, or
yes, just about on like the World Trade Center is like it was on the west side of the street. That's the World Trade Center right there. That's all that's left of the World Trade Center.
So how close did you get?
I was right like on the corner on the west side, on the the east, the south west side of the corner. I was able to shoot this video.
Well, the one thing that I commented on is initially when we saw the first tower collapse, just stunned that the structure could be weakened like that and that would actually happen, but we almost had a suspicion that the second one was going to collapse, and we saw that happen. What amazed me was the extent to which it collapsed on itself. There wasn't a great deal of damage elsewhere.
That's right. It looks like, from what it seems to me, it just came straight. I don't know if with the gas tanks that just came down a couple of months ago, it seemed to be that same thing. They just came straight. It wasn't like they fell down like on another building. They just came straight down. It was like
one of the most difficult days in the history of the city and the country. The tragedy that we're all undergoing right now is something that we've had nightmares about, but probably thought wouldn't happen. My heart goes out to all of the innocent victims of this horrible and vicious acts of terrorism. And our focus now has to be on saving as many lives as possible. We have hundreds of police officers and firefighters who are engaging in rescue efforts in Lower Manhattan. I want to thank Governor Patagi for the incredible cooperation and coordination, and including deploying the National Guard that will be available to relieve our police officers and firefighters and emergency workers in the next couple of hours. The governor and I just spoke to the President of the United States. The coordination with the federal government from the time of the first attack has been excellent, including closing off the airspace around Manhattan and doing everything that can possibly be done in the face of this barbaric act to make the city secure. And we will strive now very hard to save as many people as possible and to send a message that the city of New York and the United States of America is much stronger than any group of barbaric terrorists, that our democracy, that our rule of law, that our strength and our willingness to defend ourselves will ultimately prevail. And I'd ask the people of New York City to do everything that they can to cooperate, not to be frightened, to go about their lives as normal. Everything is safe right now in the city, and the people who are doing the relief effort need all the help they can get.
Continuing fire there, and we are now receiving word that one source of that smoke is Building 7 at the World Trade Center, and that building is in danger of collapse as it continues to burn. Ironically, that's the home to the city's emergency operations center. That's the bunker that was supposed to be impervious to almost any attack, and the place where they would coordinate response to something like this. And they are without that today, and clearly without that permanently.
Feeling that loss significantly, no doubt, in the city's attempts to organize and coordinate the rescue efforts.
Also some Secret Service offices in Building 7 at the World Trade Center, and though we're not close enough with this shot to know where all of that smoke is originating from, we do know that the structure of Building 7 has been severely compromised by the collapse of the adjacent World Trade Center buildings, and subsequently here by the fire that has burned for more than 7 hours now. Kristen's with us still here, and we have some videotape. This isn't tape that you shot, right, but some pictures of the scene in those minutes just before and after the collapse of the buildings, and we saw scenes of people streaming across the Brooklyn Bridge, some of them covered in that soot, and here they are.
What a scene.
I guess this isn't too different than what you were seeing as you were coming in.
Right, yeah. This seems like the calm before, well, no, not there, but it was such a good effort to get people out of Manhattan. Like I heard almost immediately they were putting people on ferries and trying to just get them out because they didn't know what was going to happen. The one thing that really strikes me is that I was down by City Hall, and there, if you walked maybe a block away, there was no way people there knew the impact it had, and you were only a block away. But it was so different from the scene that was right there.
Just an eerie calm.
Yeah, and talking to, like I said, law enforcement personnel, and telling me what they had seen, and talking to people who had coworkers still in the building who couldn't get out. I don't know if they got out. There's so many.
It's so frustrating as a news person today to not be able to reassure people, to not have a
Absolutely.
central phone number to give out to say, here's where your loved ones are, here's how you can get together, here's how you can contact each other.
And it could very well be days before we know, this recovery or rescue effort could take days.
As of 3 o'clock, there were 5 confirmed deaths, and as you just heard Mayor Giuliani say, the number of casualties will be more than many of us can bear. Initial reports had 600 people undergoing treatment in area hospitals, some 150 in critical condition, another 1,500 so-called walking wounded. We're going to go on the phone now to Greg Kelly, who's standing by near the scene. Greg.
Louis, if you ever imagined what a nuclear holocaust might be like, I think the picture that you imagined is probably a lot like the scene I am standing in. Of course, the World Trade Center, as we know, is gone. From where I'm standing on Church Street in Portland, I should see World Trade Center 1. There is absolutely no trace of it. World Trade Center 2, unbelievably, a major portion of the facade has been blown probably about 300 or 400 feet all the way over to Church Street. On the street, about 6 inches to a foot of soot in some areas, debris, miscellaneous debris, shoes, papers, items, articles of clothing, and I hate to be gruesome, but there are body parts scattered about. The firefighters are slowly going about the very, very grim task, combing through this wreckage for survivors, hopefully, of course, casualties. Just truly, the sun is barely visible through the smoke, but of course, from where I'm standing, the sun shouldn't be there at all. You should see the World Trade Center. Louis, one thing I wanted to point out, there is no way any pilot could have done this on his own. This was the work of somebody, that I have experience as a pilot. This was the work of a trained person. Those pilots must have been either killed or immobilized in some way. There are so many options for a pilot other than to plow an airplane into something like the World Trade Center in this kind of situation. They receive specific training. They are told not to take off under any circumstances. Once they're airborne, they squawk a certain code, 7500. That means the plane has been hijacked. Again, it's unimaginable that any skilled aviator would be allowed to be put in this position. I'm convinced, of course, this is speculation, that those pilots were killed before the airplanes impacted here at World Trade Center. Again, a gruesome scene. We are taking video right now. We'll be heading back up to the truck and show you what we're looking at as soon as we can. Louis, let's go.
We're going to go out now to New York One's Jeff Simmons of Hoboken, who actually saw that second building collapse. Jeff.
One of the subsidiary buildings beside the Twin Towers had fallen. We're going to give you a shot right now from Frank Sinatra Park here over in Hoboken, New Jersey. Thousands of people have been here all afternoon watching this, and just a few minutes ago, without any type of warning, we had heard that there were structural defects as a result of the earlier explosions today and the collapse of the Twin Towers, that other buildings surrounding them were structurally unsafe and possibly could topple to the ground. This just happened within the last few minutes. We saw this. Actually, we weren't even prepared for it. We were just looking in that direction when it went down. That's why you're seeing a new giant cloud of white smoke at this point billowing throughout the streets surrounding what had been the Twin Towers only hours ago. Lewis, people here are staring in awe, just watching across the Hudson River what has transpired. But again, this just took place within the last few minutes, and many people are sitting here just watching.
Now, Jeff,
Lewis?
We actually have tape of that. We're going to look at it now as you continue to describe what you have seen. We're looking at the tape now, Jeff.
Okay, good. This, once again, happened only within the last few minutes. We saw one of those smaller buildings just fall to the ground. We had heard earlier that it was structurally unsafe, that the buildings surrounding the Twin Towers had not been safe, had been seriously damaged in the earlier collapses. And again, from the shorelines over in Hudson County, there are hundreds of people, at least here in Frank Sinatra Park, just watching across the river. Still, we see a number of New York waterways ferries shepherding people across the Hudson, many here on the shoreline saying that they're sitting here because they really have no place to go at this point, because many of the hotels over in Hudson, Bergen, and one gentleman said as far down south in Jersey as Edison have been booked for the evening because people are unable to get back and even unable to communicate with loved ones and friends to let them know if they are okay, or to even check up with others to see how they are doing at this point. Lewis?
All right, thank you.